Hi, everyone. It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. And today we are going to be talking to sex therapist, Dr. Kristie Overstreet. We met, there she is. Hi. You can
Hey.
hear me fine? Good. I can hear you. All right, great. So I just had said your name, and I'm thinking, should I call you Kristie or Dr. Kristie or
You
something
can
else?
call me Kristie's fine.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know we had our Zoom intro a while ago and realized that we weren't just going to have one conversation together.
No way. We have plenty to say to one another about these topics.
Right. Let me adjust this a little. So I know that you and I did a podcast recently that's on your site, and people can look at that. And then today I'm gonna interview you about what you do. And then I can't remember when it said, it might be later this month or next month. Chris and I are gonna come on and talk about intimacy after toxic relationships. But I thought we're gonna talk about intimacy today,
Yeah.
but I think we should get down and dirty and talking about intimacy in toxic relationships as well as after. So as long as it's okay with you.
Yes, I'm down to talk about whatever. I'm used to
Okay, good.
whatever. So I'm excited for being here today, and I'm so glad everybody's here.
Yeah. Okay, good. So your podcast is called Fix Yourself First, and you're a sex therapist. Like, where'd you come up for the name for that podcast?
Well, Fix Yourself First, the name really came to me. I was walking with my partner one day, and I was trying to figure out how do I really share the message that I know has been working with so many clients as well as work with myself personally. And what that was is I have my own history of really toxic and unhealthy relationships. And a lot of times in those relationships, I was the issue. I had maybe the toxic behavior. I had the problem or issue. Now, I had plenty of partners that did as well. You know, negative sometimes attracts negative.
Mhm.
And so what I realized that I couldn't blame my partner anymore. It was my choice to stay in those unhealthy relationships. So I had to say, what is it about me that's unhealthy that's keeping me on this track, and what do I need to change? And so when I realized, when I started changing that unhealthiness within myself, everything around me started changing, and I stopped tolerating unhealthy from partners. And my values, I started aligning, like, what do I value? And is this person that I'm dating, their values are totally opposite, and it was not a fit. So what I realize is when I make those changes in myself, it changes everything around me. So that's the fix yourself first, not because we're broken. It's just that's the only way we're going to see a change, because we can wait all day on somebody else to change and it's just not going to happen. So we get to empower ourselves with making those personal changes, and everyone else around us gets the secondary benefit of it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so like I said, we're going to talk about intimacy, but let's first start talking about narcissism and sexual behavior, because this came up a couple of weeks ago and there seemed like a lot of interest in that. And I know I have personal experience with that. But from your perspective, what have you observed in terms of narcissistic, or let's see, let's not say narcissistic, let's just say toxic behaviors in the bedroom?
Well, when you've got a relationship and one, let's just say one partner is toxic and they got some narcissistic traits and a little bit of flavor like that, it becomes very much about that person. And in a relationship with two people, when it's really all consuming with one person, it becomes very selfish and self absorbed. Then the other partner doesn't have emotional safety, and they sure as heck aren't getting physical pleasure because they're not feeling safe to even emotionally connect, because that unhealthy, toxic partner is just taking all the air in the room all the time. So you got this real mismatch of enjoyment. And a lot of times
Mhm.
that toxic partner is making it all about them, and they may be disconnected, not knowing that what they're doing is affecting their partner, or they may know it and just not care. And that's super scary, and it happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, like in my own experience, my ex seemed like there was, because I felt like he never really shared a lot about himself, that there was always this deep space between us that of course went into the bedroom as well. But I'm wondering, and actually I'll get into an example which I know has come up with some of the people in our audience, and that's the word vanilla, and used as an insult. Have you heard
Mm.
people, toxic people, insulting their partners by saying, "Oh, you're just too boring because you're into vanilla sex"? That sound
Yeah,
familiar?
absolutely. That can be very derogatory. And look, there is nothing wrong with vanilla sex. Like, All that is the type of spice or maybe less spicy that you want some type of intimate connection. And let's be real, when it's in an unhealthy relationship like this, you don't even have any options to even explore what you want or need. So it's, if they're saying, oh, you only like vanilla plain sex, well, maybe they're not delivering the kind of sex that you want in the first place. And it's their projection of their, we'll say, stuff onto you in the relationship. And unfortunately, in an unhealthy relationship, sometimes that gets absorbed. So yeah, using vanilla as a derogatory can be really hurtful. And that leads to a lot of sexual shame. So if you're in a
Mhm.
relationship where you've been told that you're just not sexy enough, you're not spicy enough, you don't like enough of this or that, or somehow you're not enough, it's really easy for us to internalize that and stuff and stack it in. And then we believe that to be true about ourselves. And then we're stuck in that constant shame spiral. And then we can't have good sexual self-esteem when we're receiving, or let's just say being inundated with that so often. It's hard to get out of that.
Right. And that also makes me think about the general type of control, especially in the bedroom, where the other person makes you feel like if you don't do what they want, then there's something wrong with you. And I know I've shared a little bit in the past with my own experience. My ex used to write these scripts of what was supposed to happen, like literally written 2 to 3 page scripts that were supposed to be memorized and acted out. And I found it very stressful because he would get furious if I like messed up on a line. I had to wear certain things. I had to dress a certain way. I had to have certain perfume on. And to me, it didn't feel authentic at all. And like I said, it was uncomfortable. I mean, I felt kind of silly because I just thought, this doesn't feel like, I mean, I'd had other partners before, but it just felt like so
Yeah.
unusual. Have you heard of anything like that before?
Yeah, well, the thing about it is you fail at the time, maybe it's silly, like, what is this? However, when you're in a relationship and there's so much unhealthiness, you don't even get the luxury of space to really second guess anything. You're just doing what you feel like you're supposed to be doing at the moment. So it's not,
Exactly.
in case anybody's hearing that and you're feeling like I was doing wrong or I should have left or I should have known, or no, you couldn't. You can't do anything when you don't have emotional safety. And we know you can't have physical intimacy if you don't have that emotional intimacy. And that type of, I'm going to call it a sexpectation, which he had of you, which is super unhealthy. That can come, and we can, regardless, you may have had, for example, if somebody's listening, they had a lot of sexual experience, and you're like, oh, well, this is how it's supposed to do. Or you can have somebody with a lot of sexual experience that has a toxic partner like that. But even though, let's just say they know better or know it's not right, they do it anyway. It's not to blame self. Let's put the blame where it's at and say, what can I do to really align my pleasure, what I'm needing, and what I want? And the thing about it is, there's nothing wrong with dreaming, hoping, and starting to think. It doesn't mean you have to take an action right now, because safety is key. And we're really quick to put pressure on ourselves that we have to act now. And if we don't, well, then that must mean that we don't want to get out bad enough, or we don't want it to end. And so you can just hear, we go through these shame spirals so quickly and so often, which is why a lot of times we feel really stuck in that space in those unhealthy relationships.
Yeah. And just I love that word sexpectation. Did you coin that?
I'm sure someone else said it along the line. I just use it a whole lot. I don't know who to contribute it to, so I don't want to own it. But that is exactly what it is. It's these expectations of how we're supposed to show up during sex. Maybe our expectation of ourselves onto that, or maybe it's the partner's expectation, or it could be a past partner
Mhm.
expectation that you're bringing to your current relationship, because maybe you don't have your sexual self-esteem aligned with where you're at now in that space. So those can be really heavy, and they can really lead us to be unhealthy and just really disconnect in those relationships.
Yeah. And as I'm talking to you, like I'm remembering things from decades ago. And one thing that I'm going to bring up from my own experience that I know um, is similar to other people in this community is that sometimes there's a shift after one gets married. Like a lot of people will say that they didn't notice that the abuse started till literally the wedding day. So when I first got married, right, maybe like a few weeks after the wedding, I can't remember whether it was during the honeymoon because we waited a few weeks before we left, but he said that I had to be trained to
Hmm.
do things his way. And I was thinking, all right. I mean, again, I had partners before him and I hadn't heard this before, but it's like what you said, like I felt like I'm doing something wrong. I'm not attractive. And then it was like every day I had to do things exactly the way he said. And I remember saying at one point, okay, so when can I train you? Like, when is it going to be my turn? And it never happened until maybe 16 years later, as the marriage was falling apart. And we went to this big mistake, multiple couples therapists. And the couples therapist said, okay, to my ex-husband, like, now it's your turn. And he said, no, I already did it. And she said, no, you should do it. But he hated it. He hated having to do what I wanted, having to go through the same training that he put me through. Have you heard of anything like that before?
Yeah, from those narcissists. And I'm using the term narcissist, and I know your community knows, but just quickly, we have narcissistic personality disorders, which the DSM-5, kind of the mental health, I'm not going to say Bible, but the mental health guide to help try to keep us all on the same page with diagnosis, from medical to psychologists to psychiatrists to therapists, so that we're all speaking the same language versus someone saying, oh, this is what I think a disorder looks like, or this. So we have a narcissistic personality disorder with specific criteria, but then we have narcissistic traits and patterns. Because a lot of times, this example with your past partner, there's a lot of, I don't know the criteria, so I can't go into diagnosis, but there's a lot of traits that fit right into that, meaning it's about me, what I say goes. And if you question, or if you say anything, the gaslighting starts to make you seem like you're the problem, you're not being a good wife, or you don't know any different. And that mind manipulation and that emotional whiplash that you're constantly going through is so very common. And then comes, again, I always say it comes back to the self-blame. What am I doing wrong? What am I not doing enough? And when shame sets in, it's really hard for most of us to talk to our friends about it, much less talk to a therapist or counselor or a group. Because if we told a friend or a family or somebody that loved us, they'd say, what are you doing? That's silly. Why are you with this person? And then we learn real quick to say, gosh, I need to stop talking bad about them, because I don't want them to not like them, because he may change or she may do something different. So we keep that narrative to ourselves, and then that shame spiral keeps going and we feel really stuck. But that it's going to be my way or the highway, and the highway never happens because you're not going anywhere. You can't get out, right? That's where the control comes on.
Great line.
and that's just what happens. And it happens over time. It doesn't just happen like one day switch. And it's those little signs and those red flags that you're looking for, that they're valid. When you start second guessing yourself, like, oh, it looks like this, but I'm sure it's not. Well, is your gut and your intuition telling you that's it? Then it probably is. And in these unhealthy relationships, partners, the toxic partner hopes that the other partner starts losing trust in themselves, start second guessing them. Definitely not question that toxic partner, because that's not allowed, but second guessing what the reality is, second guessing what's really happening, and keeping that silent to self so that nobody else finds about it. Because if that keeps happening, the toxic partner gets to keep doing their thing, which is what they want anyway.
Right. And that's the essence of one of the types of behaviors considered under coercive control is that emotional abuse, and depending how it's used, like sexual abuse, with all that shame. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I got that good quote written down about my way or the highway, but then the highway never happens because you're never going. I love that. All right, let's talk about addiction, especially porn addiction or sex addiction, and how that also affects intimacy and sex.
Sure. Well, I want to start out by saying, just as many times as you have different clinicians, everyone's going to have a different clinical approach and a different clinical belief in their work. And with my specialty in clinical sexology and my certification in sex therapy, my approach to this has changed quite a bit over the years. Meaning, I started out in the addiction world, and we have behavior addiction type things that maybe don't fall into our criteria from a DSM standpoint, which is where we get our codes for insurance and keeping everybody on the same page. So if I'm working with someone or seeing someone that says, I've got a porn addiction, I say to that person, what does that mean? Or if I'm working with a partner that says, my partner has a porn addiction, I want to know what that means to them. On my end as a clinician, I'm not going to say that's a porn addiction or this is a sex addiction, because from a clinical standpoint, we don't have that criteria out there. It does not mean it's invalid behavior. It does not mean what you're feeling is not there, because we don't base our life on what a book says. So I want to be super clear on that. And having the struggles with this behavior, a lot of times the partner who's been hurt by this behavior will say, they're not prioritizing me. They're watching porn. They're not working on our intimacy. They're choosing that over me. That's a lot of hurt, pain, and sexual shame that happens because of the disconnection in the relationship and the lack of trust in the relationship. So the way I want people to think about that is, if there's any type of behavior, any type of thing that a toxic partner is picking over you, and you're there willing to work and trying to help it be healthy, they definitely could have a problem with that. And for individuals that do struggle with that, what happens is they take, again, and just take all the air out of the room, especially when it comes to sex. It's really about them, their pleasure, what they want. And that breeds a lot of what I call comparisonitis in the partner that's being hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're telling me I'm doing it wrong. They're telling me it's got to look like this. They're telling me, meaning toxic partner, that I'm not doing this enough, or that I don't have enough experience. And they're not taking that person's space into consideration on what their pleasure is. So it can be very disruptive. And again, just quickly, we want to connect. We have intimacy, which is connection, and we have trust. They are in tandem. So when we talk about intimacy, physical intimacy is one of the 12 types of intimacies. We have communication intimacy, spiritual intimacy, a lot of different kinds. And then we have the trust. So what happens is, when there's a toxic person struggling with that behavior, that other partner's trust goes down, right? So therefore, intimacy and connection goes down because they're in tandem. You can't have one without the other. So what the individual may be noticing is, gosh, with my partner, they're treating me different. They're not initiating sex with me anymore. They're telling me I'm not good enough. So then your trust in them and emotional trust goes down, and that intimacy goes down further and further. And that's what blows up the relationship, is that issue with trust, because of that link with that connectedness and intimacy.
Yeah. So I'm taking notes like quickly, but still trying to look at you and like jot stuff down. What really affected me at first, what you said was about the diagnosis. And I'm guessing because my ex-husband, without going into too much details, let's just say disagreed and said that because certain addictions are not in the DSM-5, don't count. And I'm really glad that you mentioned how it doesn't make it invalid. It doesn't make the behaviors invalid and the way you're being treated just because someone says, well, that I can't really be what you're calling me because it's not in the DSM-5. It's how a person is affected.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we get caught up in that. And again, one therapist isn't the same as other therapists, and people can have or counselors, they can have really bad interactions and judgment. So I need to tell anyone, like, make sure if you're not feeling connected with whoever you're working with, if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel heard or valued, find somebody else, because not everybody is like that. Because your unique situation you're dealing with is unique to your relationship. And there's, again, shame. It's like the theme today. So much shame comes and stacks up in there when we feel invalid or not validated, or said, oh, because it doesn't fit in this box, therefore it doesn't exist, which is saying the hurt, pain, and what I've gone through does not exist. And that is not the case at all.
Right. And that's part of their whole gaslighting. I know that's looking back now, he was saying basically what you're complaining about doesn't mean anything. You're the one with the problem. You're trying to put a label on me. And because there is no label in this book, then therefore everything you feel is dismissed and you're wrong. And I'm going to keep going on and doing what I'm doing. And you're the problem. So fits right in. The other thing is there's a movie I know that one of the therapists that, because we went to multiple couples therapists at the end, recommended seeing called Don John. Have you heard of that movie before?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recommend that at all? Because this therapist recommended that we watch it, and I thought it was really fascinating in terms of showing an example of addiction to porn behaviors and how it affected a specific person's life.
Yeah, and yeah, it is definitely one to check out for insight. And I think I want to go back to what you said, how it affects the life, because we look at any type of behavior, we're looking at, is it affecting you relationship wise, work wise, legally wise, financially wise, friendship, community wise, whatever's important to you. If there's a behavior you're doing or a behavior I'm doing that affects where it's causing a really big problem, there's the door to say, I need to take a look at this, regardless of a definition, regardless of a criteria, regardless of like checking the boxes. We have to go back to say, is this affecting me, or is what my partner's doing affecting me? Then it's valid. So yeah, that's a great example of how some people's behavior definitely blows up every single part of their life.
Yep, for sure. Okay, so now let's start talking about stress and intimacy. So you know from our podcast together that as a high conflict divorce coach and in my own life, we deal with a lot of stress, especially in the legal system. And the feeling that most people come to us with, the word is, I feel overwhelmed. They often are subjected to daily harassment from a toxic partner, the court trauma, from having to deal with them in the legal system. So, but they're anxious to move on with their lives. And I like how you mentioned too about shame, how that affects us in terms of not even wanting to talk to our friends about it. But I was going to say, how does stress affect intimacy with not just romantic partners and possibly the inability to connect because we're so consumed by it, but also with friends and family?
Well, again, it's very isolating because when you're going through this high conflict stress of going through all the different hoops that you have to jump through to take care of yourself from a legal standpoint, it leaves you with very little time to just do and have for you. So when a friend or family, or even maybe a close friend says, well, how are you doing? You sometimes might feel like, oh gosh, I don't want to go through this again, or I don't want to repeat what happened yesterday in court again, or I'm not supposed to say this to this person, or I wanted to tell dad, but I don't want to tell mom because she's going to harass me about it. Like, so you're like this mental gymnastics for all the different things that you're trying to maneuver. It can take a toll on these relationships. So it's really important where we use boundaries. Your boundaries, we've got time boundaries. Take the time for yourself, or say, no, I can't go do that. I've only got 10 minutes. I got to run. It's physical boundaries, removing yourself from situations. There's sexual boundaries, emotional boundaries. So using your boundaries, even with friends and family and loved ones, to tell them what you need, so that this is going to be a time that you're not used to probably speaking up for yourself or asking for needs. It's really important that you get very vocal and try to spread out your support, not depend on one person because they're going to have something going. Maybe have a team or a couple people around you, because that area of connection and communication is definitely strained because of the stress. And if you're someone who is a people pleaser, which many of us are, we're trying to recover from people pleasing, we're apt to not ask for what we need or say, hey, I need help with this. I'll be fine. Everything's okay. And there's nothing okay. So you got to have that person that you can drop that wall with, be real. And when they try to jump in and try to tell you what you can do because they want to help fix this, to say, I just need to talk. I just need to vent. Or I just need some time. Can you take the kids? I need some time by myself. Asking for those needs is really hard for people pleasers. So that would be helpful.
Yeah. And I love what you said about spreading out your support, because that's the same I guess, model that we always use. We have a little image. Chris is over there, so I'm not going to call him over. You don't need to do it, Chris.
Hey,
Of a table. But we talk about, that it really takes a team to get through these high conflict divorce or post-separation abuse situation. We say, and it's that same idea of spreading out the support. So we say you have your friends and family. They love you, but they don't quite understand what you're going through. And they often will inadvertently make comments that are harmful, like, I can't believe someone as smart as you would have fallen for this. Like, why didn't you leave sooner? Or, the judge is going to do the right thing. Don't worry about it. Just dismiss it. So there's that. Like, again, it is a support, but it can't be your only support. And then you might have your lawyer if you're in the court situation. And they're not supposed to be an emotional support, but a lot of people like me in the past tend to lean on them because we think that's my ally. That's who understands my story. But then they end up spending a lot of money because they're counting on this lawyer to support them, and the lawyer has other cases, and that's not really the lawyer's job. Then we have someone like a therapist like you, or I'm a state certified domestic violence advocate. We can help someone focus on healing, which is great. But most people like us, except for me, because I'm in it, don't understand the trauma of dealing with the legal system and how crazy it is. So where a therapist might give advice of like, just heal yourself and try to gray rock and don't engage, that will bite someone in the butt in the court system because you have to be very strategic. So we say, like, Chris and I are high conflict divorce coaches. We're that fourth leg of the support system, which is like, okay, we're the friend that gets it, who can say, like, this is what you're dealing with. We do have clients that say they've hired us just to focus on the legal stress that they're dealing with so they could actually focus on their trauma with their therapist. So it's a great example of spreading out the support, especially in these really high conflict situations. I love that you said that. All right, so now let's talk about how the trust thing, like you mentioned before, trust, intimacy, connection. People, and I have several friends who have said, I'm done. Like, I'm done dating. This just destroyed me.
Yeah.
I am never going to even think about entering into a relationship again. I'm good. And I certainly understand that, and that's acceptable. If, that's fine. But then sometimes, and certainly not with the people in our legal abuse community, but
Right.
those who are done or, at a point where they feel a little more at peace, I like to say, but think about everything this person's already taken from you. They've already stolen from you. Are you willing to let them steal or take away your future chance of intimacy as well? They've already taken all of this. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. Totally agree. You're spot on with this. Another way to approach this, because we like to have options, right? So another option could be for that person is, you know what? You are so dang right. My gosh, I can't imagine getting back with anybody right now because of all the trauma you've been through. Sure. Don't even think about getting a relationship ever again. Do you, date you, get to know you, enjoy your own pleasure, go with it. So my approach for a lot of things, I go with people's resistance, meaning like when they say this is where I'm at, I'm like, I'm meeting you where you're at. Let's do that. But then what naturally happens for many individuals as they get healthier and they start healing and they start actually focusing on themselves and learning about themselves as they're healing, they start realizing, oh, I've got some values I want to share with somebody else. Or, you know what, I'm getting a little lonely. Maybe I'll just do something and hang out with some friends. And then, yeah, someone meets somebody, but it's time has got to pass. This goes back to the trust because going through this type of high conflict and this type of trauma causes us to lose trust with ourselves. Of course, other people too, but ourselves. And then what happens as we heal, we start regaining trust with ourselves if we do the work. So with that being said, they start realizing that actually I do deserve a healthy relationship. What would that even look like? I'm not sure. And then as time passes and the catalyst is further behind and that time tricks on, then that trust is going to build up in yourself and potentially trusting someone again in the future. So I'm all about, yep, do your thing, fix yourself, put all that energy into you because you're going to come out stronger than ever. And if it is solo the rest of your life, good for you. Do it. That sounds awesome. I'm here cheering you all along the way. What happens is through healing and being your best self, you end up getting better. Therefore, you're going to probably want to have some type of connection with somebody at some point in the future.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Kristie. So is there anything else that you want to say or how can people find you?
Sure. People can always connect here on Instagram. It's probably the easiest. It's Kristie_Overstreet. Shoot me a DM if anything we talked about resonated or if you got additional questions. And I appreciate the work you're doing for support because I work with a lot of folks and you've got to have that team, which is what you and Chris do. And I appreciate everybody just working on yourself. Again, when we take care of ourselves, we do it for us and then everybody else around us gets that benefit of it. And I hope everybody that's here today will be sure to join us in a couple of weeks on the podcast where I'm going to have you and Chris talk about post recovery and getting back in touch with intimacy. So that'll be a lot of fun. So thank y'all for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. All right, we'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Bye,
Okay,
y'all.
bye.